Welcome back to the channel, and for this video we're upping the stakes and playing in the 1-3 match stack game all week. For the year 2025, we made it a goal to win at least $25 per hour while playing both 1-2 and 1-3. We're a full month in, and I think it's safe to say we're not off to the best start. We've played a total of just 19 hours and 55 minutes of live poker and lost a total of $249.
Bro, look, you suck, bro. You suck, bro. I'm gonna just tell you the truth.
The month of January had a mix of both bad play and run bad, which will almost always result in losing money at this game. I'm not too discouraged because I've had way worse losing months in our poker career, but I'm trying to take this goal seriously and do whatever it takes to achieve it. So when you get punched in the face in poker, or life in general, there's only two routes to take. Either keep getting knocked out like every Tyson opponent in the 90s, or when it seems like you're down and out, only time will tell what happens, so all I could do is get back on the felt, stay positive, and grind it out. So that's what we're going to do by heading out to the nicest card room in Northern California, which is none other than Stone's Gambling Hall. But before we dive into this week's hands, I gotta announce that every Monday I host an online meetup game and give away $100 to the highest stack at the end of the night. If you want in, or you're looking for a place to play low-stakes online poker, click the Club GG link in the description. We buy into the 1-3 match stack game for $500, and the table just opened up, so the first hand of the day means one thing and one thing only: bomb pot time. 6 people decided to join the bomb pot party, and we get dealt the infamous ace-king offsuit on the button. With $90 in the pot, the flop looks pretty good when it rolls out ace-10-6 with 2 clubs giving us top pair, top kicker. Checks to the player in the hijack, who throws out a pretty hefty bet of $75. Folds to me, and I don't think there's anything to do other than call. Since it's a bomb pot, he could have any 2 cards, so it's possible I'm beat, or he can have a worse ace, flush draw, or straight draw that's trying to take down the pot. I put in the $75 and everyone else gets out of the way. Pot's now increased to $240 and the turn peels off the 10 of diamonds pairing the board. I was a pretty big fan of this card because it makes it less likely he has a set of 10s, and if he had ace-6 for 2 pair on the flop, he now gets counterfeited and we have him beat. Our opponent now starts off with a check, so I think we have the green light to bet. I settle on a sizing that will keep all his draws and worse aces in there and throw out a bet of 110. I was expecting a call with most of his range, but instead of doing that, he puts in the check raise to 250, putting me in the tank. I don't see a hand like ace queen or ace jack taking this line for value, and I also don't see any of his draws taking this line when the board pairs. So I decided to just toss my hand in the muck and live to see another day. And I'm glad I did, because he rolls over pocket 10s for quads, and we escaped disaster. To add insult to injury, he beat us with the same hand that we lost 5 times in a row with last session, so I'm officially crowning pocket 10s as my least favorite hand of 2025 so far. We're down a couple $100 to start the day, and I don't want to play short stacks, so nothing to do than just add on $300 to my stack, and we're now into the game for $800 total. In this next hand, the tighter player in early position opens the action to $13, and I'm in the small blind and look down at the ladies, pocket queens, and put in the 3-bet to 55. Folds back to him, and he quickly puts in the call. Pot's up to 110, and he has around $90 behind, so unless an ace comes out on the flop, I'm piling in the money. Flop rolls out 7-6-5 with 2 clubs, and we stick to the plan and go all in. He snap calls, and I turn over my hand like I always do when I'm all in, and after the turn peels off the 9 of clubs and river deuce of diamonds, our opponent looks at the board and tosses his hand in the muck. Nice to win a pot and hopefully build some momentum going forward. A few orbits pass by and there's another dealer change, meaning we get involved in another bomb pot. 6 people join the party again, so there's $90 in the middle and we get dealt the best hand ever created in pocket aces. Aces are obviously amazing, but in a bomb pot you have to tread lightly because your opponents have any 2 cards, so it's hard to put them on a range. Going 6 ways to a flop of Jack 9-4 with 2 diamonds giving us the overpair. Action gets checked to me and I throw out a half pot bet of $45. Just the player who hit quad 10s on us in the first bomb pot calls, so we're hoping to get some revenge. The hands I'm putting him on are Jack X, 9X, diamond draws, or a hand like Queen 10 for the straight draw. Turn is an interesting one, and the 8 of spades making this board a lot more connected. Queen 10 gets there for the straight, and a lot of hands make 2 pair now. And to make matters worse, our opponent leads into us for $80. I think we could take all his flush draws off the table because I don't think they'd be taking this line, so I'm putting him on some type of value hand. With this bet, he's saying that he either hit the straight or 2 pair, but I think it's also possible he could be making this play with a hand like Jack 10 that has top pair and a straight draw trying to set their price. I think our hand is a little too strong to fold just yet, and raising would be a major overplay, so I just call. Pots balloon to 340, and the river peels off the 3 of spades, which is a pretty big blank. Our opponent now starts off with a check, and on this specific board, I think a value bet would be a little too thin, so I check it back. He rolls over pocket queens for the overpair, and our aces are good. Not too often you get aces in a bomb pot and they hold up, so I'll take it. With that win, we've grinded back to get our chip stack above the even mark, leading up to this next hand. The $6 straddle is on, and next stack throws on the dead $15 raise, so essentially the blinds are 1, 3, 6, 15 for this hand, so even though we have $815 in our stack, it's only about 55 big blinds. So I think it's safe to say the action in this game is crazy this morning. I'm first to act, and we look down at ace-queen offsuit, which is good enough for a raise. I start the action off with a raise to $45, and action gets folded all the way to the player who put in the $15 dead, and he makes the call. I jokingly say that I'm up against any 2 cards in this spot. When the flop comes out king 9-6 with 2 spades, I start off with a bet of $40 since this board should favor our range more than his. He puts in the call, and the pot's now up to 170, and the turn is in the best and the 7 of diamonds, which gives a lot of hands more equity. 7-8 now has a pair to go along with the straight draw, 7-6 makes 2 pair, and gut shots like 10-8 make a straight. So when he checks, I decide to check it back and see what ensues. River comes out the 10 of spades, bringing in the front door flush, and our opponent goes out to throw a bet, and I just snap fold. He's nice enough to show for the camera and flashes 9-4 of spades for flop middle pair, rivered flush. Even though it wasn't an eventful pot, I like showing you guys a hand anytime we get a reveal because it's so rare. Next hand up is a wild one. The $6 straddle is on, and under the gun opens the action to $20. Like I said earlier, this game isn't short of action because 3 people end up putting in the call before it gets to me. I'm in the big blind and look down at 9-8 of diamonds and also put in the chips. Straddler also calls, so we're going 6 ways to a flop of Queen Jack 10 with 2 hearts, giving us a straight on this extremely connected board. I start off with a check since this board should hit the pre-flop raiser's range. When it gets checked to him, he throws out a bet of $45. Player in the cutoff puts in the smooth call, and action gets folded to me. On this board, there's a ton of hands to get value from, so I decide to put in the raise to $200. Original raiser gets out of the way, and when action's back on the cutoff, he goes in the tank for a bit. I think if he had a set or 2 pair, he'd put in the chips right away, so I'm thinking he has a combo draw with either a flush draw or pair plus straight draw. He eventually puts in the chips, so the pot has increased to $565, and we have just under a pot-sized bet left. Turn isn't the best card in the deck, and the Jack of Diamonds now pairing the board. Like I said earlier though, if he had Queen Jack, I don't think he would have tanked this long, so this card could have given him trips with King Jack, and he's just never going anywhere if he has that. So I go all in, and he snap folds King Queen offsuit face up, which makes a lot of sense given the action. Our bottom straight holds up, and we're now back up in the land of profit again. Just a few hands later, we're under the gun and look down at the Cowboys, pocket kings. We open the action to our standard of $20 over a $6 straddle, and I guess we're playing a bomb pot in this hand because 6 people put in the call. With 140 in the middle, the ace magnets do their thing when the flop comes out ace 9-5 with 2 clubs giving a second pair. I start off with a check since I'm up against 6 other ranges, and the player to my left goes all in for his remaining $50. Folds all the way to me, and I just close my eyes and put in the chips hoping he doesn't have an ace. I turn over my hand, and he shows 10-7 of clubs for the flush draw, and we luckily fade a club and scoop in this decent little pot. We finally got some momentum after being stuck $200 after the first hand of the day, and we're now up over $400 on the session. In this next hand, the $6 straddle is on and 4 people end up putting in the call for $6 till action's on me and I look down at the ladies, pocket queens in the small blind. $6 isn't enough, so I raise them up to 40, and I guess I should have gone bigger because 4 people end up putting in the call, bloating up this pot. Now action's on the hijack, who originally limped in for $6, and instead of calling like I expected, he now raises to $2.90. He just called the $6 in late position pre-flop, so in my opinion this hand feels a lot like he has a middling pair or a big ace. Something like 7s through jacks or ace queen and ace king that just called pre-flop and now sees $200 of dead money out there trying to take it down. Sitting here with the third best hand ever created, I think we have an easy decision, so I go all in. Player to my left calls for less. When action gets folded to the hijack, he puts in the chips, and I'm feeling pretty good about the situation given the action. I turn over my hand like I always do when I'm all in, and he turns over the best hand ever created in pocket aces. After 4 limps, he decided to just overlimp in the hijack with aces pre-flop and somehow got the perfect setup with all the callers in between, so I thought he was making a squeeze play. If he limp re-raised in early position, I think I could have put aces in his range, but not in a million years would I have ever expected that given the pre-flop action. We have 2 outs to try and hit, but unfortunately the board runs out all low cards and we lose this massive pot. Don't think I could have done anything different, especially for just over 100 big blinds, so I'm just going to chalk it up to a cooler and move on. After dumping off $700 of our stack in one of the wildest hands I've ever played, we add on $200 more, so we're now into the game for 4 figures, $1,000 total. Next hand up after that ridiculousness, action gets folded to us on the button and I look down at Jack 10 offsuit. Easy raise in position, so I open to $15 and get called from both the small blind and the big blind. Going 3 ways to a flop of Queen 10-9 rainbow, giving a second pair and a straight draw. Checks to me, and I think we have a standard bet here. I throw out $20, and surprisingly both players put in the chips. I don't think I'm ahead of 2 people on this board, so if a blank comes out on the turn, I'm just going to check it back and realize my equity. But the turn isn't a blank because it peels off the 10 of diamonds, now giving us trips. Checks to me again, and I need to get value from all the Queen X hands that had us beat on the flop and charge any straight draws. So I throw out a bet of $70 and just the small blind calls again. Pot's now up to $245 and the dealer puts out the 8 of spades on the river, giving us the straight. Our opponent now takes matters into his own hands and throws out a bet of $70. It's super small in comparison to the pot, so I think there's merit to raising to try and get value from worse or get him off a chop, but I take the low variance route and just call, expecting to either be good or chop it up. But that's not the case because our opponent rolls over pocket queens for top boat. I don't know what the hell is going on this session because I opened the action on the button and he just flatted with pocket queens pre-flop. This also happened in my last vlog at 1-2, so I guess it happens at both levels. Our next playable hand we got dealt was pocket 10s in a bomb pot, and once again we lose money with them because the flop has 2 overcards and we're forced to fold. We're now down just over $500, but we still have plenty of time left to grind up a stack and get profitable. In this next hand, the cutoff opens to $10, and I'm in the small blind and look down at Queen Jack offsuit. If you're going to play this hand in the small blind, it should either be a 3-bet or fold. So I decided to raise to $40, and surprisingly, the big blind puts in the cold call. Cold calls are usually pocket pairs or suited broadways, and not much else. Cutoff ends up getting out of the way, so with $90 in the middle, we're going heads up out of position to a flop of Jack 10 with 2 diamonds, giving us trips. I start off with a standard bet of $40, which is what I do with my entire range on this board, and he quickly puts in the call. Hard to range him yet since I think most pairs will call in position, so there's plenty of holdings he could have. Pot's now up to $170, and the turn is the biggest blank in the deck and the deuce of clubs. I could obviously still value bet, but I wanted to make it look like I had a hand like ace king or ace queen and was checking as a give up. He doesn't take the bait and ends up checking it back, So we go to a river, which peels off the deuce of hearts, giving us a full house. I decided I want to bet since my line doesn't make much sense and it would look like I'm bluffing. So I throw out a bet of $110, expecting to get called by most pairs. But instead of calling, our opponent goes all in. I snap call, expecting to be good, or at worst chopping. But he turns over Jack 10 of clubs for the flop full house and has us crushed. I don't know what's going on today, but this is one of the wildest sessions in my poker career. We basically just got stacked, but we still have some time to play, so I didn't give that whole spiel at the beginning of the video just to give up. So I add on another 4 figures worth of money, so we're now into the game for 2,000 total. But unfortunately, we were dealt some pretty decent hands for the next 45 minutes, but none of them were vlog worthy, so let's get to the outro.
I think that was the most roller coaster-like session I've ever had. We started off the day down $200 after just the first hand, then up $400, then for the rest of the day we got absolutely smoked. In for $2,000 and out for $10.44 for a $956 loss. The only positive of the day is we avoided a 4-figure loss and we don't have one in 2025 yet. So hopefully day 2 goes 1,000 times better than this shit show.
The first hand of day 2 starts about 20 minutes into the session. The $6 straddle is on, and 2 people put in the call. Folds to me in the cutoff, and I look down at ace 10 of spades and put in the raise to 30. Folds to the big blind now, who's a pretty aggressive player, and he now 3 bets to $100 even. Everyone else gets out of the way, and action's back on me. Since I've seen this specific player squeeze with a lot of hands worse than ace 10, I think we have an easy call because I don't want to get exploited in the future by folding. If I fold this hand, then the only hands I would continue with are monsters, and my range would be pretty face up. So I put in the chips, and with $200 in the middle, we get a pretty decent flop of ace queen 3 rainbow with 1 spade, giving us top pair and backdoor straight and flush opportunities. He starts off with a half pot bet of $100, and I think we have an easy decision. He could be using the ace as a scare card with a hand like jack 10 or king jack, and now that we hit top pair, the only thing left to do here is call. So I put in the chips, increasing the pot to $400 even, and the turn is the most interesting card in the deck and the jack of spades, now giving us a straight and a flush draw. He's got me covered and now decides to go all in. I figured all his bluffs would have given up by now, so I think he's weighted towards pure value. I know I'm behind, but I won't be able to look at myself in the mirror the next day if I fold this and don't see a run out. So I put in the chips, and the pot has exploded to $890. I turn over my hand face up, and he shows ace queen offsuit for top 2 pair. Against that hand, we have 12 clean outs, so we're hoping for any spade or any king. The dealer burns a card, then throws out a black 9, but unfortunately it's a club and we get scooped. In hindsight, I would have liked to have deeper stacks to defend his 3-bet, but I'm not one to throw away a suited Broadway hand and get exploited in the future. After getting stacked, we add on $500 to get some chips on the table, and we're already into the game for $1,000 total. While we're getting our chips set up, I don't have any time to even think about last hand because I immediately get dealt in the second best hand ever created when I look down at the Cowboys, pocket kings. The $6 straddle is on, and 3 people put in the call. I'm in the hijack, we raise the price of poker to $35. We get called from the button, big blind, and middle position player. Going 4 ways to a flop with 140 in the middle, and the flop comes out queen 7 deuce with 2 diamonds, giving us the overpair. Action gets checked to me, and I throw out a bet of $85 targeting queen X, 7X, and all the flush draws. Only the button ends up putting in the call, so the pot's now increased to $310. Turn peels off the 5 of clubs, and I could continue value betting, but I wanted to make it look like I was rage bluffing on the flop and just trying to steal the pot since I got stacked 1 hand prior. I figured if he had a queen or a flush draw, he'd bet and I could go for the check raise. So I check, but he doesn't take the bait and checks it back. River peels off the 3 of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush, but I'm not too concerned about it on my end. I don't think our opponent is too strong given the action, so I throw out a 1/3 size bet of 105, and our opponent quickly puts in the call. I turn over the Cowboys, and he tosses his hand in the muck, saying that he had 7-8 for middle pair. That was a wild 2-hand sequence we just had, and I'm just glad we were able to get some money back. We're looking to build some momentum after winning with kings when we get dealt ace-queen offsuit in this next hand. There's no straddle on, so after one player just calls the $3, I raise it up to 20 and get called from the player to my left, big blind, and limper. Going 4 ways to a flop of ace-6-5 with 2 hearts, giving us top pair second best kicker. Action gets checked to me, and I decide to throw out a value bet of $50 targeting worse aces in both straight and flush draws. Just the player in the big blind calls, so we're going heads up to a turn with 180 in the middle and see the 10 of diamonds. He checks in flow, and unless he has ace-10 specifically, this card really shouldn't change much and I still need to be value betting. So I throw out a bet of $95, and once again our opponent puts in the chips. Since he didn't raise at any point on this connected board, I think we could take sets and 2 pairs off the table, so I think he's weighted more towards draws. Pot's now up to 370, and the river peels off the 7 of diamonds, bringing in the backdoor flush. I was expecting our opponent to check, but instead of checking, he ends up going all in for around $260. Since I have the ace of diamonds in my hand, I'm blocking a lot of flush combinations, so I'm thinking if it's possible our opponent could be turning a missed heart draw into a bluff for this sizing. I wouldn't put it past him, but at the same time, my hand looks a lot like I have a big ace, so I think it'd be hard to pull off that play. So I default to a fold like I usually do at the low stakes, and good thing we did because he shows 4 deuce of diamonds for the backdoor flush. His hand started with the gut shot on the flop, then picked up more equity with a flush draw on the turn, and finally ended up rivering the flush. Glad we were able to get away from it and not punt off a good portion of our stack. But another dealer change went down and we're back in the midst of a bomb pot. 7 people joined the party, so there's exactly $100 in the middle, and we get dealt my favorite hand in poker, which is none other than Jack-10 suited. Dealer throws out the flop, and we see a King-Queen-5 2-club board giving us the straight draw. Checks to me, and in bomb pots, players usually throw out a bet with 2 pair or better, so since they all checked, I don't think anyone's too strong in front of me. So I try to steal it with a $45 bet, but we get called from the button and big blind. Pot's now up to 235, and we're hoping for a 9 or ace to give us the straight, or even a heart to give us additional equity with a flush draw. We get just what the doctor ordered after the turn peels off the 9 of spades, giving us the nuts. And I thought I was daydreaming because the big blind now donk leads into me for a massive overbet of $300. I only have about $385 left in my stack, so I debate just flatting the $300 to entice the button to call, but I figured if he's willing to call $300, he's definitely willing to call a bet of $385. So I make it easy on myself and go all in, and the button snap folds. Big blind puts in the remaining chips, and I turn over my hand like I always do when I'm all in. There's now over $1,000 in the pot, and we're hoping for a clean river, but it comes out the 6 of clubs, bringing in the front door flush. But luckily our opponent flashes Queen-9 offsuit for just 2 pair, and we scoop in this massive 4-figure pot. Full orbit goes by of non-eventful hands, so we're back for another bomb pot. 7 people join the party again, and we get dealt King-Jack offsuit. Going straight to a flop of King-8-4 with 2 clubs, giving us top pair solid kicker. Action gets checked to me, and I decide to throw out a half pot bet of $50 targeting worse kings, 8x, and flush draws. We get 1 customer in early position, so pot's now doubled to 200, and the turn peels off the 4 hearts pairing the board. Our opponent has around $160 left in his stack, which is around 80% of the pot. He decides to check it over to me. I think there's only one option, which is all in. I'm hoping to get called from a flush draw or worse king, and without much hesitation, our opponent puts in the chips. I turn over my hand face up. He turns over King-Queen offsuit for a better top pair. River isn't the miracle 2-outer we needed, and we ended up doubling up our opponent. Nothing we really could have done that didn't result in us losing $222 in that hand. For this next hand, middle position opens the action to $15, and I'm next to act and look down at ace-jack offsuit. I like mixing in both a 3-better call with this hand, so this time we just take the low variance route and put in the call. Everyone else gets out of the way, so we're going heads up to a flop of Jack-10-3 with 2 hearts, giving us top pair top kicker. He throws out a c-bet of $15, and I decide to just call to keep all his bluffs and worse hands in there. Pot's doubled to 60, and the turn peels off the ace of spades, now giving us top 2 pair. He continues the aggression and throws out another half pot bet of $30. This specific opponent is a solid player that doesn't get out of line too often on these types of boards, so I think he's betting for value. We're not behind too many holdings, so now it's time to bloat up this pot with a raise. I throw in a bet of $100 even, and without much hesitation he puts in the call. We could take King Queen off the table since I'd figure he'd re-raise me with that, so I'm mainly putting him on Ace King or Ace Queen, worst 2-pair combinations, or middling flush draws. Keeping that in mind, the pot's now up to $260 and the river peels off the deuce of hearts, bringing in the front door flush. He checks it over, and against a lot of opponents I'd value bet, especially holding the ace of hearts blocking a lot of his possible flushes. But like I said earlier, he's a solid player, so let's go to the audio for my live thoughts. So since I think he'd only call me with better hands, I decided to check it back, still expecting to be good a decent amount of the time. And just like almost every hand this week, we get a shocking reveal when our opponent rolls over top set with pocket aces. The case ace on the turn cost us some money, but luckily we were able to get a river that kept us from value owning ourselves. Without a doubt, this week consists of some of the wildest hands I've ever been a part of, but unfortunately I was on the losing side of most of them. We played for a bit longer, but couldn't get anything going, so let's get to the outro.
I honestly thought we played pretty good today, but in the end we just couldn't manage to book a win. In for 1,000 and out for 584 for a $416 loss.
As for this week in poker, we got absolutely smoked. Played a total of 5.5 hours of live poker this week, lost a total of $1,372 for a negative hourly win rate of $249.45. I think it's safe to say this was one of the worst weeks in my poker career, but there's nothing to do than just keep showing up, stay positive, and grind it out. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you guys run good at the tables, and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button to help me reach my year-end goal of 20,000 subscribers.